ओम परतत्वे सदा लीनो रामकृष्ण समाज्ञया यो धर्म स्थापन रतो वीरेशं तं नमाम्यहम्. We are studying Swami Vivekananda's Jnana Yoga and we have finished 8 lectures. The last was realization based upon first chapter of Kathopanishad. And now today we start the 9th lecture. Name is Unity in Diversity. Delivered in London 3rd November 1896. That means immediately after the lecture on realization. And it is based upon the second chapter of Kathopanishad. Yes. Second chapter of Kathopanishad. And on that, Swamiji has given this lecture. The name is Unity in Diversity. If you think of it a little of the title, diversity means the world which we see. The world which we see is diverse. No two things are exactly same or similar. But if we trace their origin, if we trace from where they have come, we find unity there. That is unity in diversity. Because this diversity or the world is appearance. It is the appearance of one reality. So this relation between the one reality and the phenomenal universe, phenomenon and phenomenon, one reality and diverse universe, that is called unity in diversity. And now, Swamiji has started reading the second chapter of Kathopanishad. We have seen in the first chapter that the aim of life has to be realization of our own true nature. Now, how to arrive at that? What is the difficulty? Why we do not see our own real nature? That is the question. And in reply to that, Yamaraj is telling Nachiketa, Paranchi khani vyathrunat swayambhu tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman kaschid dhira pratyagatma namaikshat avrutta chakshu amrutatvam icchan. It is easier to lay the blame on God. God is called here Swayambhu. That means he has a free will. He exists by himself. He does not require anybody's help. That all comes under Swayambhu. Now, we have sense organs and we glorify my eyes, my ears, my nose, my mouth. But the Rishi tells us they are like punching holes in this body. And now you have seen the punching machine. If the punching machine has become old, sometimes it cuts in such a way that the hole is opening only on one side. You may take a better example. You have seen the one-way valve. Say in the cycle tube we feel air. When we feel the air goes in, but then we close the tap, it does not come out. So there is one-way valve. Water comes one-way valve. So Paranchi means opening outside only. Khani means holes. We glorify our indriyas, but the Rishi is calling them holes. Vyatrunat, punched into our body. Swayambhu. Swayambhu is given there so that you ask why you have done like that, he will say no why. I have done what I have done. So, you cannot challenge him, that is why he is called Swayambhu. The Swayambhu Paramatman has punched holes opening outside in this body called man. Tasmat, therefore, Parang Pashyati. Why we see outside? That is the question. If the reality is inside, if the reality is our innermost core of personality, why we do not see it? Because we look outside. Why we look outside? Because the Vidhata has punched holes in our body, opening outside only. So we are compelled to see outside. Not that we cannot see inside, but common man cannot see, does not see. Kaschit Dhira, rare person, some rare person who is wise. Dhira stands for Viveki, discriminating. Really the meaning is a wise person. Now what does the wise man do? They are very rare in this world. Kaschit Dhira, Pratyagatmanam Aikshat. He can see, he has seen. Aikshat is past tense, he has seen. That means those who are wise persons, they do see. What does he say? Pratyak Atmanam, the reality which is the innermost. Pratyak means gone inside. How much inside? Absolutely inside. Atmanam is our own reality. So, some wise person has seen the innermost reality. The generality of mankind is looking outside. But this some wise person has seen how Avrutta Chakshu, symbolic, by closing his eyes, meaning by not allowing his five senses to see outside. Seeing, hearing, touching, tasting, smelling, we are doing outside. Now suppose I stop seeing outside. And then what the Indriyas will do? They will try to see inside. Avrutta Chakshu, with closed eyes or with reverted eyes. We know that Meera song, na ulate bhai more naina na ki. So by reverted eyes, why has taken so much trouble? Amrutattvam, because he wanted immortality. Nobody wants I should die. But the body is going to die. And so long as we are looking outside, that means identifying ourselves with body, so long death is certain. He wanted immortality. He did not want to die. So he refused to take cognizance of the so-called fact that I am this body. Kaschit Dhira Pratyagatmanam Aikshat Avrutta Chakshu Amritattvam Icchan. He wanted immortality, so he reverted his Indriyas out inside, and God is present there, always present there. So if you can see inside, you see God. Swamiji has translated the self-existent one, Swayambhu. The self-existent one projected the senses outwards. Projected the senses outwards. Literal translation is punch the holes opening outside. And therefore, a man looks outside, outward, not within himself. Tasmat parang pashyati nantaratman. They do not see what is inside me, what is my inner reality. They do not see. because they are looking outside. A certain wise one, desiring immortality with inverted senses, pursued the self within. Pratyagatmanam pursued, directly experienced, realized the sense, the reality behind. As I already said, the first inquiry that we find in the Vedas was concerning outward things, and then a new idea came that the reality of things is not to be found in the external world, not by looking outwards, but by turning his eyes, as it is literally expressed, inwards. So, this Swamiji has discussed in almost all lectures. We see the world and we want to find the reality, but outside we will not get the reality. And if you go to the center, you will find the reality. So that is how somebody did. As I already said, the first inquiry that we find in the Vedas was concerning outward things, and then a new idea came that the reality of things is not to be found in the external world, not by looking outwards, but by turning the eyes, as it is literally expressed, inwards. So that is the first criteria of going to the reality. No differentiation is made by otherwise, sannyasi, grahastha, this and that. But one has to see in practical life. If we stop all outside activities, will you exist? If you say yes, all right, come inside. If you say no, then automatically you are getting debarred from this search. Very clear-cut explanation. And the word used for the soul is very significant. Pratyak Atmanam. Pratyak Atmanam is the word used. It is he who has gone inward, the innermost reality of our being, the heart center, not brain center. Brain center may be used for thinking. Heart center is for experiencing. The heart center, from which, as it were, everything comes out. As it were, everything comes out because nothing comes out. It appears to come out, and so it is said everything. As it were, everything comes out. The central sun, of which the mind, the body, the sense organs and everything else, we have, everything else we have are but rays going outwards. Thing is inside, its rays are going outside, that is the five senses. Mind also. The sense organs and everything else we have are but rays going outwards. Men of childish intellect, ignorant persons, run after desires which are external. Persons run after desires which are and enter the trap of far-reaching death. But the wise, understanding immortality, never seek for the eternal in this life of little things. Paracha kaman anuyanti bala te vitatasya mrityor pasham. So, in the second mantra, Yamaraj is telling that Men of childish intellect, balaha, means ignorant persons, run after desires which are external. The subject wants an object, so that is the desire, external. And enter the trap of far-reaching death. Te mrityor yatata vitatasya pasham. Mrityor pasham are spread everywhere and they have to die. But the wise, understanding immortality, never seek for the eternal in the life of finite things. So, immortality is understood as realizing one without a second reality. And so, when we understand that, never seek for the external in this life of finite things. Our body, mind, etc. is finite. And if we seek external things, we die. So let us think of the internal reality, that is the way they reached. The same idea is here made clear that in this external world, which is full of finite things, it is impossible to see and find the infinite. The infinite must be sought in that alone, which is infinite. And the only thing, the only infinite about us in that which is within us, our own soul. Our own soul is infinite. We have seen that in the chapter on realization. Though it appears to be inside the body, but it is consciousness. Body is physical. Consciousness has nothing to do with the body. So actually, inside is only the nearest spot to recognize him. Otherwise, it has nothing to do with that inside. Neither the body nor the mind, nor even our thoughts, nor the world we see around us are infinite. What we see is limited by our own vision. The seer, he to whom they all belong, the soul of man, he who is awake in the internal man, alone is infinite, and to seek for the infinite cause of this whole universe, we must go there. In the infinite soul alone we can find it. Okay. What is here is there too. And what is there is here too. He who sees the manifold goes from death to death. That is another mantra from the second chapter. Why this mantra? We see that in the Vedic Karma Kanda or Samhita portion, there are so many heavens. What are heaven? Pleasurable experience. That is why it is called heaven. But whatever is we see, feel, touch and taste here in the world, same thing is there because our nature is not changing. Our nature is not changing, so our experience will not be changing. And we have seen this, that the way we experience the world is only five senses. If that does not change, what we are experiencing? Objects of five senses. Maybe a little refined and all that, but same thing. He who sees the manifold goes from death to death. That is the ordinary man's habit. Manifold means here the same, variety, diversity. So the man wants to see outside, he sees the diversity. Then he has to die. Then he has to be born again and then die again. So that is the way of a common man. When we say common man, we should understand ourselves, then only we understood. We have seen how at first there was the desire to go to heaven. When these ancient Aryans became dissatisfied with the world around them, they naturally thought that after that they would go to some place where they would be all happiness without any misery. That automatically man thinks. Today when people do not believe that also, in the world itself they seek here and there. What is not available in India will be available in America. When you would go to some place where there would be all happiness without any misery. These places they multiplied and called sargas. The word may be translated as heavens, where there would be joy forever. The body would become perfect and also the mind, and there they would live with their forefathers. But means without rational thinking, man thought like that. But as soon as philosophy came, rational, intellectual search for reality is philosophy. Men came means it arose in man's mind. Men found that this was impossible and absurd. What would be impossible and absurd? Happiness without misery. It will be absurd. The very idea of an infinite in place would be a contradiction in terms, as a place must begin and continue in time. We are thinking heaven as a place. If it is a place, it is limited. It is subject to time, place and causation. So how can it be permanent? Simple logic. As a place must begin and continue in time, therefore they had to give up that idea. They found out that the gods who lived in them, in these heavens, had once been human beings on earth. Okay. Who through their good works had become gods, and the godhoods, as they call them, were different states, different positions. None of the gods spoken of in the Vedas are permanent individuals. That is the important point. There are different posts. Because somebody has to rule over land, somebody has to rule over waters. So, like that, there is a post. And if somebody does good works, he goes there. Then his good works are over, he has to come back. Then another person goes there. So, they are not permanent persons, they are permanent posts. Men go there temporarily. For instance, Indra and Varuna are not the names of certain persons, but the names of positions as governors and so on. Governor of this, governor of that and so on. The Indra who had lived before is not the same person as the Indra of the present day. He has passed away, and another man from earth has filled his place. So therefore, okay. So with all the other gods, these are certain positions which are filled successively by human souls who have raised themselves to the condition of gods, and yet even they die. In the old Rig Veda, we find the word immortality used with regard to these gods, but later on it is dropped entirely. As man understood, rationalized, progressed, he found these gods cannot be permanent. He found that these gods' names are posts on which different persons go. In the old Rigveda, we find the word immortality used with regard to these gods, but later on it is dropped entirely, for they found that immortality, which is beyond name and form, space, cannot be spoken of with regard to any physical form, however subtle it may be. Mind is subtler, Indriyas are subtler. Any subtle it may be, it is physical form, so it cannot be infinite. Infinite is only consciousness. However fine it may be, it must have a beginning in time and space. For the necessary factors that enter into the makeup of form are in space. Space, form is made by light, and light exists in space. Space, air, light. So light exists in space, and that light has the form. So everything which has the form exists in space. Try to think of a form without space, it is impossible. Space is one of the materials, as it were, which make up the form. Now this important thing is there. Swamiji has translated as space because that is the nearest translation. The original word is Akasha. And the concept of Akasha is that it is not a vacuous space, as you know, it is primordial matter. So, it has not yet concretized, and that is the concept of space. Try to think of a form without space, it is impossible. Space is one of the materials, as it were, materials which make up the form, and this is continually changing. Space and time are in Maya, and this idea is expressed in the line, what is here, that is there too. So that Swamiji has explained. You already know the Maya from the first 3 chapters. Basing upon that, it is easy to understand, though this is a separate Upanishad, that all this is changing things are in Maya. If there are these gods, they must be bound by the same laws that apply here, and all laws involve destruction and renewal again and again. So, all those are wrong notions where they are permanent persons. Both are permanent, man goes there temporarily. These laws are molding matter into different forms and crushing them out again. Everything born must die, and so if there are heavens, the same laws must hold good there. So in the psychological universe, same laws will be there. Okay. In this world, we find that all happiness is followed by misery as its shadow. In order to try to find the reality, we have been asked to give up external. Today we feel that external, we have some happiness. So we must first analyze this factor of happiness. So Swamiji takes it up. All happiness is followed by misery as its shadow. Life has its shadow, death. They must go together because they are not contradictory, not two separate existences, but different manifestation of the same unit. Example, candle is burning, it is living, and it has started dying. So life is death. not two separate existences, but different manifestations of the same unit, life and death, sorrow and happiness, good and evil. The dualistic conceptions that good and evil are two separate entities and that they are both going on eternally is absurd on the face of it. So Swamiji is making us understand Vedanta, and according to that thinking, everything other than this one reality is, to think of it permanently is absurd. They are the diverse manifestations of one and the same fact. One time appearance as bad and another time is good. So Swamiji is explaining now that nothing is fixed, good and bad. How many changes? Something which is good today may not be good tomorrow, is not good tomorrow. Let us have a little funny story on this point. A man purchased the sweet jalebi from a shop, and it turned out to be of a very high quality jalebi. Now next day some guest had come. So that man told his son, you go and from that shop purchase jalebi. Yesterday jalebi was so nice. So that boy went there and purchased the jalebis, and the jalebis were rotten. The man was very embarrassed. So he could not say or do anything when the guest is there. When the guest left, that man went to the shopkeeper and said, because I sent my son, you have deluded him. You have given very bad jalebis. Yesterday jalebis were nice. The man said, your son told me, yesterday jalebis are nice, give me the same thing. So I have given the same jalebis. Now the jalebis which were excellent yesterday cannot be the same today. From this simple example we understand that a thing which is good today cannot be good tomorrow. It changes with time. Everything changes with time. So good is not a fixed quantity. The difference does not exist in kind but only in degree. Degree means if it goes to third day, they will rot still further. So the difference is in degree. They differ from each other in degree of intensity. We find as a fact that the same nerve system, Swamiji is giving 2-3 examples. We find as a fact that the same nerve systems carry good and bad sensations alike. And when the nerves are injured, neither sensation comes to us. So if bad is stopped, good will also stop. If a certain nerve is paralyzed, we do not get the pleasurable feelings that used to come along that wire. And at the same time, we do not get the painful feelings either. They are never two, but the same. First point, that good today is not good tomorrow. Now second point, again, the same thing produces pleasure and pain at different times of life. Okay. Thing is same. It may not have changed its nature, but the circumstances when they change, the thing is no more useful. That is the second point. First point, change in the thing. Second point, change in circumstances. Third point, the same phenomena will produce pleasure in one and pain in another. So there is nothing absolutely good. It is good for me, not good for you. Then how it is absolutely good? This Swamiji gives an example. The eating of meat produces pleasure to a man, but pain to the animal which is eaten. A small video clip had gone viral few days back. A small English British baby girl. Her mother is asking what you will eat. She says anything but not flesh, but not animal, she says, but not animal. Will you eat fish? She says that is animal, I will not eat it. Why will you not eat? Why will you eat everything again, she says, but not animal? Why not animal? She says when you fry that animal, I don't think that animal likes it. You are frying that animal because you like it, but that animal cannot like it. Beautiful video clip is there. If you are available, you please see. And the scene is beautiful more because it is not an Indian girl who has sanskaras of vegetarian food. She is not talking about her sanskaras, but she is talking that she is seen. I have seen they suffer, she says. Now, wonderful meat we have eaten. Yes, but it has been injurious to the animal from whom that flesh was taken. So this example is good for one, not good for another. The eating of meat produces pleasure to a man, but pain to the animal which is eaten. There has never been anything which gives pleasure to all alike. Never anything. Some are pleased, others displeased. So on it will go. Therefore, this duality of existence is denied. Duality means good is one thing, bad is another thing. That is the duality. Good itself becomes bad, bad itself becomes good. I will tell my own funny experience about that jalebi. I stayed for 1 year in Rishikesh in 78-79. And the rooms were newly constructed, maybe in 75 or so. And I lived in that room for 1 year. Then again I went to Rishikesh in 2003, December. That means 79, 21 and 3, after 24 years. And I was allotted the same room in which I lived. And what was the condition of that room? It had water below on the ground. That means from the ground water was coming. The roof was wet, the walls were wet. And because of that wetness in the wall, there were white ants, not in the woodwork, in the walls. And if you keep one book or one cloth outside, it will be finished. Those white ants will eat it off. Same room after 30 years. So, nothing remains same. And circumstances, the roads along the Kutia, their level was being raised every year. So what was the level of the Kutia has become much lower. And the drainage, sewerage lines were all coming into the toilet. Same room. Therefore, this duality of existence is denied. And what follows? I told you in my last lecture that we can never have ultimately everything good on this earth and nothing bad. It may have disappointed and frightened some of you because we have wrong hope. that everything will turn out to be good later on. But I cannot help it because that is the truth. And I am open to conviction when I am shown to the contrary. If you can show that everything is coming out better and better, but until that can be proved to me and I can find that it is true, I cannot say so. Nothing good is not improving. Ultimately, everything good will not remain. The general, so that is the point Swamiji has taken about the external world. We cannot find any solution there. The general, and that is the first criteria. Why that man has turned inside to find the reality, not outside. One of the reasons is this. The general argument against my statement, and apparently a very convincing one, apparently, is this, that in the course of evolution, this Swamiji has talked 2-3 times. When Darwin discovered evolution, people became so happy that now, in the course of evolution, all evil will be destroyed. I will tell you a funny story. One Punjabi boy, born and brought up in America, his father died of a motor car accident. He had come to India with his mother. And that boy was telling, now we have devised, the Americans have devised air cushions in the car. So even with that speed of 160 or 200 kilometers per hour, this crash will not produce any bad result. Then I said, but will it save humanity? He said, no. People now have started driving 300 kilometers per hour. So where do we go? That is impossible. That is the wrong hope. He told me one more funny thing, that the Americans are going to discover an injection. If you inject, man will become happy. I said the cost may be tremendous, and those who do not get it will become more miserable. So how do you get this? So it is a wrong hope. Now the analysis of wrong hope is that we by nature are bliss. Existence, consciousness, bliss is our own nature. That is why this wrong hope is coming. The general argument against my statement, and apparently a very convincing one, is this, that in the course of evolution, all that is evil in what we see around us is gradually being eliminated. We find some defect and we eliminate that. By the time some more defects are there. Here also I know one story. In the medical science, previously, for many infections, sulfur was the medicine. They found sulfur reacts in badly. In many people, the reactions are terrible. They discovered penicillin. It has no reactions of sulfur. So they started giving penicillin to everybody, and some people died immediately after giving penicillin. So it does not have the reactions produced by sulfur, it has its own reaction. Nowadays they test a man, first giving a little whether reacts or not, then they give the penicillin. That is medical science. Evolution, breakthrough. And all breakthroughs, they move in circles. Doctors, please pardon me. You know, in medical science, there is a section dealing with diseases produced by medicine. Where will you go? in what we see around us is gradually being eliminated, and the result is that if this elimination continues for millions of years, a time will come when all the evil will have to be extirpated. First, for whom they do not believe in continuity of life. So for whom it is going to come, we all have to suffer. And the good alone will remain. This is apparently a very sound argument because hope is there. Would to God it were true, but there is a fallacy in it. And it is this, that it takes for granted that both good and evil are things that are eternally fixed. And Swamiji has shown that nothing is fixed. It takes for granted, mind you, all those optimists, it takes for granted that there is a definite mass of evil which may be represented by 100, some figure, and likewise of good, and that this mass of evil is being diminished every day, leaving only the good. But is it so? The history of the world shows that evil is a continuously increasing quantity as well as good. If the good increases, the evil increases. And Swamiji's patent theory of arithmetical and geometrical progression will take up. Take the lowest man, Swami is showing that now. Take the lowest man, he lives in the forest. His sense of enjoyment is very small, and so also is his power to suffer, very small. His misery is entirely on the sense plane. If he does not get plenty of food, he is miserable, but give him plenty of food and freedom to row and to hunt, and he is perfectly happy. His happiness consists only in the senses, and so does his misery also. But if that man increases in knowledge, his happiness will increase, the intellect will open to him, and his sense enjoyment will evolve into intellectual enjoyment. He will feel pleasure in reading a beautiful poem, and a mathematical problem will be of absorbing interest to him, but with the finer nerves will become more and more susceptible to miseries of mental pain, of which the savage does not think. Take a very simple illustration. In Tibet, there is no marriage, and there is no jealousy. Yet we know that marriage is a much higher state. The Tibetans have not known the wonderful enjoyment, the blessing of chastity, the happiness of having a chaste, virtuous wife or a chaste, virtuous husband. These people cannot feel that. And similarly, they do not feel the intense jealousy of the chaste wife or husband, or the misery caused by unfaithfulness on either side, with all the heart-burnings and sorrows which believers in chastity experience. On one side, the latter gain happiness, but on the other, they suffer misery too. Take your country, England, which is the richest in the world at that time, before Second War, before First War even, which is more luxurious than any other, and we see how intense is the misery. How many more lunatics you have compared with other races, only because the desires are so keen. Now this has shifted to America. Lunatics are most in America, because the desires are keener. A man must keep up a high standard of living, and the amount of money he spends in 1 year would be a fortune to a man in India. Sure. You cannot preach to him of simple living because society demands so much of him. The wheel of society is rolling on. It stops not for the widow's tears or the orphan's wail. This is the state of things everywhere. Your sense of enjoyment is developed. Your society is very much more beautiful than some others. You have so many more things to enjoy, but those who have fewer have much less misery. You can argue thus throughout. The higher the ideal you have in the brain, the greater is your enjoyment and the more profound your misery. One is like the shadow of the other. That the evils are being eliminated may be true, but if so, the good also must be dying out, the other side. Good is increasing, evil is increasing. If evil is decreasing, good also is decreasing. But are not evils actual? This is relative, no actual, but are not evils multiplying fast and good diminishing, if I may to put it? That arithmetical progression has come here. If good increases in arithmetical progression, evil increases in geometrical progression, and this is Maya. Swamiji has explained this in the Maya chapter. That is the contradiction in life. That is called Swamiji's Maya. Factual contradiction in life. This is neither optimism nor pessimism. Vedanta does not take the position that this world is only a miserable one, mind you. Important. That is a Buddhistic thought. That would be untrue. At the same time, it is a mistake to say that the world is full of happiness and blessing. What is in the world? I have repeatedly told you. There is neither happiness nor misery in the world. Happiness is inside, and the shadow of happiness is outside. And if we try to catch the shadow, what comes? Alas, nothing, gone. That is misery. So misery is not getting happiness which we expect. That is misery. And we expect more happiness, more misery. So it is useless to tell children that this world is all good, all flowers, all milk and honey. That is what we have all dreamt. Understood? That is all in our hopeful mind, wishful thinking, not truth. And that we teach to the children. I told you something. I was in Chandigarh. One old devotee from Amritsar. His son was a student of engineering. And the father and son came to me. And the father is telling, please explain something to my son. He says there is nothing, vacuum everywhere. There is no value. There is no goodness anywhere. And I tell him there are so many good things of life. The son replies, Father, you inject good thing in something and call it good. In itself it is not good. I told his father, you please learn from your boy, not your thing to the boy. Don't delude him by saying that there are so many good things. He has analyzed and we call it good and it becomes good. So the boy told father, you inject goodness in a thing and then tell me it is good. Internally if you find hollow, nothing. So that is what we have all dreamt. At the same time, it is erroneous to think because one man has suffered more than other that all is evil. So that is the cynicism, it comes to cynicism. Nothing is good, nothing is good, everything is bad in this world, everything is bad in this world. That is not the position. Position is that both are together. Same thing is good, same thing is bad. That is the real Vedantic analysis. Otherwise everything is a dreaming. It is this duality, this play of good and evil that makes our world of experiences. At the same time, the Vedanta says, do not think that good and evil are two separate essences, for they are one and the same thing, appearing in different degrees and in different guises and producing differences of feeling in the same mind. In the same mind, today good, tomorrow bad. So the first thought of the Vedanta is the finding of unity in the external, the one existence manifesting itself, however different it may appear in manifestation. From this, Swamiji concludes, give up this idea of duality. One reality appear. Now, appearances are like shadows. So, in shadows we appear this good and bad and all that is in the shadows. You find the real, that is unity in diversity, not somehow make unity. The origin is only unity, manifestation is diversity. The one existence manifesting itself, however different it may appear in manifestation. Think of the old, now against it there are some theories. And Swamiji puts up some of them and ridicules them so that our brain should not be affected. Oh, time is passing away. Think of the old crude theory of the Persians. Two gods creating this world, the good God doing everything that is good and the bad one everything bad. On the very face of it, you see the absurdity, for if it be carried out, every law of nature must have two parts, one of which is manipulated by one God, and then he goes away and the other God manipulates the other part. There the difficulty comes that both are working in the same world, and these two gods keep themselves in harmony by injuring one portion and doing good to another. This is a crude case, of course, the crudest way of expressing the duality of existence, two gods. But take the more advanced, the more abstract theory that this world is partly good and partly bad. This also is absurd, arguing from the same standpoint. It is a law of unity that gives. So, these are appearances. Swamiji again and again is showing us. The two opposites are appearances, Maya. The reality is one only. It cannot be called good or bad. It can be called absolutely good or absolute. It is a law of unity that gives us our food. That is the same law that kills many through accidents or misadventure. So, different expressions of one reality because all are shadows. So, this is unity in diversity. We will take it up, the remaining portion, in the next turn. Simple but very forceful argument Swamiji is doing based upon the second chapter of Kathopanishad. Om Paratatve Sada Lino Ramakrishna Samagya Yo Dharma Stapana Rato Vire Shamtam Namamyam Om Shanti 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 Hare Om Tat Sat Shri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.